Hi, Brian. Thank you for being on my podcast. Of
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Cheryl.
course. Please tell us about your journey and how you became a Reiki healer and numerologist.
Sure, I'll do my best to give the Cliff Notes version because I could go on so many different elements. But it started out, I was a high school math teacher, so not in the spiritual lifestyle at all, very logical approach to life and with that perspective. And then life was had gotten a little challenging and I started trying to reach out and do different things. And it started with meditation. So I found a local meditation class through a Buddhist center, and I started going there, and I enjoyed the way that I was feeling and the things that I was learning. And then to kind of break away from the things that were causing me uh, suffering in LA, I went back to visit my family in Pennsylvania and was hanging out with a friend at a local bar one night, and she introduced me to her friend. She told him, "Hey, I'm cold. Can you give me some Reiki and warm me up?" And I look at both of them, wondering, what in the world are they talking about? And so that led into a long conversation with this guy. He started telling me about Reiki and his journey and what it was and all this kind of things, and it just piqued my interest. And I was like, I got to find out more about this. So when I came back to LA, I went to the bookstore and found a Reiki for Beginners book. Had to start somewhere. So I'm like, okay, let me read up on it. And I like the connection with meditation that I was doing at the time. And the stories in there were just really fascinating. And it said that if you want to do this, you have to take a class. So I saw that a local community college had a community class on Reiki. And I just immediately signed up. I had no experience with Reiki at all. And I just was like, well, it says you have to take a class. I was a teacher at the time. So I was like, okay, you just got to take a class. And in that class, it just challenged my way of explaining life and working with things. And it piqued my interest even more that I couldn't explain some things that were happening. I was feeling tingles, but there was no touch, and different things were happening. I was like, what is going on? So it was really, really powerful, and I liked it. And that began the search trying to figure it out. And so the next few years, studying with different teachers and going on with more interest in it, and then enrolled in a year-long teacher training class for Reiki. And it was during that time that I was really having a rough time with teaching, and it just wasn't giving me any enjoyment. It was really hard to go to work every day, wasn't connecting with the students as much, and it was just not pleasurable.
Mm.
And all the signs were pointing me to go and do more healing work. And so I resigned from full-time teaching in 2012, 5 years after I started with Reiki. I had no idea that it was going to change my life in that way, and took a leap of faith and started doing more spiritual work and healing work. And then one after I had resigned, I was in a local metaphysical store shopping for some crystals, and I saw that they had a sign on the wall for a numerology workshop. And I had just like heard of it. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew that it was similar to astrology in a way that it tells you about yourself, and it involved numbers. And I was a math teacher, so I'm like, okay, this sounds right up my alley. And I happened to not have a gig that particular day. I'm also a musician, so it was like,
Mm.
okay, it's again lining up for me to take this class, and I took it, and it was so fun. It was so interesting, and we were taught how to find our numbers and do numbers for other people. So I just started experimenting with all of my friends. We'd be hanging out and be like, okay, what's your name? What's your birthday? Let me do your numbers. And this is what it says about you. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but started having really interesting conversations with people. And I learned the personalities of the numbers. I learned how to interpret them, and I learned my friends better, and I
Mm.
learned me better. Um, and that was it. I was like, okay, yeah, people need to know this. It's a lot easier to learn for me than astrology, and it can give you a real depth of knowledge into yourself and your relationships.
Yeah, I took your online class on numerology. I'm also very fascinated by it, and I've had it done for me, but I've never taken the class to see, well, how do they do that? So it was interesting to see, okay, this is how. Okay, now I get, because you would see the person like, put the numbers together and you're like, oh, that's so cool. What are they doing? And
Yeah, it's like, let me peek behind the curtain and see how this all works.
like a magic show, you want to see like what's going on.
Exactly. Now you're the magician.
Right. So it was so much fun to try it on my family members and, my mom, she's like, I want to do it. I want to do it.
It's good when they have willing participants and they're like, "Oh, I want to learn what you just
Yeah, yeah.
learned."
And so it was fun to see, like, for myself and for them, and to, like you said, like, understand them better, and to, like, and for my husband, and see, like, okay, wow, this makes sense. And oh, okay, yeah, and I'm this number and he's that. And okay, now I get it. So
Yeah,
it was
isn't it
very
great to
fun.
find out them much at a much deeper level? You
Yeah,
understand like, "Oh, this is why they do that." And now I understand why I'm upset when I do this or they do that. Like it doesn't gel, but now I know and I can work around it.
right. I agree. And um, how can numerology help us in our lives? Like, what has been your experience with it?
Well, at the foundation, when you get into it, it's really knowing yourself. Um, and when you learn that basic birthday number, the life path number, um, when you lean into that a little bit more, life tends to flow more easily
Mm,
because you're not fighting your natural inclination of how your life is, like the theme of your life and those things. And it doesn't have to be your career or anything, but it could be hobbies or interests, and make sure that they're a part of your life. And then you just get connected with yourself on a deeper soul level. And then um, learning other people, like we were saying, it just deepens relationships and makes them um, more compatible in a way. Like you know them, and if you then learn how to do it and explain it to them, or they get a reading or whatnot, and then they know themselves, you know yourself, and then you know each other,
mm,
well, then you know how to work with each other, and you know when you need to do things on your own, independent of them, and there's no hard feelings about that or anything like, oh, why are you doing that? Oh, I know why you're doing that. Okay, you do that, and then we can do this. And just I find it such an improvement in relationships
mhm.
going forward with other people. And it's so simple to do, but
That's so
man, it can make huge impact just knowing, because you learn how other people view you too. And
mm,
because sometimes when you're learning yourself and you're trying to explain yourself to someone else and they're not connecting with what you're saying, it's because they're probably seeing you as a completely different person than you see yourself. But when you learn how to see how other people view you, then you can start to shift that conversation to get them to understand you a little
mm.
bit more. And then you can create a deepening there.
And I think it's like also like acceptance of when you see it written, you accept that person as they are, instead of like maybe trying to manipulate or change or, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, without knowing things before, because like with the numbers, there's nine different personalities. Well, 11 when you bring in the master numbers. And so uh, we default to viewing the world through our eyes and our experiences. And so we sometimes unconsciously expect other people to behave the same way or think the same way as us. But when you see someone else as who they are based on that numerology, you go, oh, that's what their needs are. That's what they need to be who they are. Got it. And that's very different from who I am and what I need. But when you can rectify that and go, oh, okay, now you know how to love someone more. You know how to like cater to them and still be true to yourself.
Yes.
And I think that's extremely powerful.
Yes, I agree. And something I found fascinating, because I met you through my friend Irma. I don't know if you remember, it was years ago, but you had like these Reiki circles at the Tower Center.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was one of the volunteers. And something you talked about once after class was how you wear different colors depending on like your number or the day. And I found that so fascinating. And that was one of the reasons why I also took your numerology class. I was like, oh, what is this all about? Because I'm all about colors, as you can see behind me. When I was going through some difficulties myself, I began to surround myself with more colors. And also, I used to wear a lot of black. And with all the classes I was taking, they really advised to wear other colors besides black. Because culturally, I mean, I'm Iranian, and that's a big color for us, like black and chic.
Hmm.
It's like the color, like when you go to a party to wear.
Yeah.
So it was kind of ingrained in me to have that. And so it was just, and at one point I became unconscious. I would look, when I became conscious, I was like, oh my goodness, most of my wardrobe is black. And there's nothing wrong with that color. Like it's I do like it every now and then, but now I'm realizing how much of a difference my mood is in and how I feel by wearing different colors
Oh, for
and
sure.
having it around me, surrounding me. So how has that been for you? Like, what difference did it make to have wear those certain colors every day?
Well,
And
it's funny
what
that
impact did it have?
you had your experience with finding the color black in your wardrobe. I found the color blue and gray in my wardrobe a lot. And I was completely unaware of this until I was in like a Qigong workshop and they were talking about the five elements and they were talking about the element metal and that most people that are that element end up having a lot of blue and gray in their wardrobe just by
Um,
default.
wow.
And when I went home and I looked, I was like, all of my t-shirts are either blue or gray. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And so that was when I started becoming aware. I was like, okay, now I have to consciously not pick these colors because I have way too many of them. And then in studying numerology, and someone, I think it was Louise Hay in one of her books,
Hmm.
put the colors with the different numbers of numerology, and she described it in a way that um, if you're living in alignment with your numerology on a daily basis or yearly annual basis, then you're sailing with the wind in your sails. You're going with the current. Now you could choose to do that, or you can use whatever colors you want, and that's your free choice. But it's easier to be in alignment with who you are and where life is going for you. And and so that sent me on the path to really getting more colors in my wardrobe and wearing them consciously each day
Mm-mm.
to be in alignment with that natural flow of universal energy for me on a daily basis. And then on an effective level of living, it removes one decision from my life each day of what to wear. I don't have to think about it. I know what number it is today. So today it's a purple day. I'm going to wear my purple shirt. Done. Moving on. I can
Yeah.
use my energy on a whole many different levels um, in terms of like the wardrobe and living and things like that. And colors in general. And, you know, just for health reasons, they say eat the rainbow
Hmm.
because the
Yeah.
different colored foods are higher in different minerals and different vitamins. So you want to eat the rainbow and be surrounded in that.
Right, right. When I make salads, like people always comment on how colorful they are. And I just like looking at the beautiful colors. And I know it's good for me, but it's mostly like just what I see in front of me is
Yeah.
important to what
Yeah.
I put in my body. So yeah, that's very true. But what if like there's certain colors that don't go well on certain people? Like for me, it's orange and yellow. So what do you like?
Well, it doesn't have to be
Yes.
necessarily the major part of the wardrobe. It could be like a little accent here or
Mm,
there, just so that you're in alignment with it. But you could also switch over to those colors of crystals or stones,
yeah.
precious metals, anything like that. So you
Okay.
could, you could have a tumbled stone and just put it in your pocket, or a piece of jewelry with that particular stone in it.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Um, so have you ever helped creatives unblock? I mean, I didn't know you were a musician.
Yeah.
So you're creative. Have you ever helped them unblock any
Yeah.
um
One thing that's
channels?
coming to mind, and it wasn't even the intention of the sessions. I was working with a director one time, and there was some illness that we were working through and doing Reiki on that aspect. But after every session, he would jump up from the table, grab his notebook, and just start feverishly writing all of these ideas that came to him during the sessions. And so it's just like every time I'd be packing up, he goes, "Sorry, I'm not talking. I just got to capture all this stuff that's there." And I'm like, "You go." Like, I'm just happy that that has happened for you. Um, there was I'm trying to think now, there was um, a client that after the Reiki sessions, she would go home and just paint. And she
Mm,
sent me a couple pictures of the pictures that she painted, because sometimes they would be images that came up during the Reiki session, and then she would just paint them at home from memory and kind of recreate them, or just
yeah,
have a creative boost that would just come out on the canvas afterwards. And you can help them through Reiki. Just, I think it's just really turning inwards for all of us creatives, because even if I'm feeling not really inspired to play or practice, if I put the time aside and I get going, it's going to start happening. And so sometimes if we have like a writer's block or something, it's our own creation, consciously or unconsciously. And so it's just turning that direction inward, whether it's through a Reiki session and you just get quiet and you let the energy kind of help guide them in that aspect, or even, I'll do hypnosis with people and just guide them through relaxation, turning inside, and really getting the creative juices going, um, in a way that, you're going in hypnosis. So it's not necessarily like a creative adventure, but it's all working with internal imagery and internal self-talk and all of that stuff. So if you can start adjusting it, you might find out those locks that you can unlock consciously or unconsciously to like open those creative juices again. And like, oh, okay, well, there we go.
yeah,
That's happening.
yeah. And that's why I love talking about these healing modalities in my podcast, because it's helped me so much as an artist and to heal my life in so many ways and to get to where I am now. And so I always like to share the knowledge, and have people who maybe don't know much about it to educate, because a few years ago I knew nothing. Like when I first had my first Reiki session with Irma, what is this? What is she doing? Because she was just practicing at the time. And I I was so weirded out by it. And then I began to learn more and, started taking classes myself and then learned about numerology and all these different, and then yoga, like that's one after yoga, I always get inspired to create. Um, so yeah, certain things
Yeah.
happen like this energy flow and it opens things up. So I want creatives to, if they're open to learn and to try it.
Try it. You just
Mm,
have to try it. And that's why I like working with the different cancer nonprofits, because all of the survivors or patients, they get to try these modalities for free.
yeah.
And that way it's like, okay, let me try something, even though it's not something that I'm into or I don't know anything about it. Then you try it and you find out, wow, that was really powerful. I never would have gone out on my own to do that, but let me give it a shot. And then it changes the life. Like Reiki, I had no idea it was going to change my life in such a way.
Right.
I was a day-to-day high school teacher. That was it.
Right.
no thought that it would completely change my life.
Yeah. I love these stories because it shows that you don't have to stay in a certain area of your life just because like that's what you think maybe this is my destiny or I'm stuck or I have no other choice. To just try and go out there and see what else there is. And you never know what will happen.
Switch it up, switch it up.
Yeah.
And then of course learn the numerology cycles of your life, and each year can change the focuses, and those 5 years are big years for change. Gotta switch it up.
Yeah. Do you have any words of wisdom for all the creative spirits out there?
Well, you mentioned that word stuck just a minute or two ago. I caution everybody with being stuck to change it up, but make sure that if one thing, do something that you enjoy. And it doesn't have to be like you do it as your career path, because then that could sometimes be too much pressure on somebody. But make sure you're doing things that you enjoy, that bring you joy, and that make you happy. Um, because if you let those things go, life's going to be challenging. It's going to be, you're going to be unhappy, and you're not going to be feeling yourself, and you're going to wonder where things are going. Just have to make sure you check in. Am I doing something that's making me happy? And find a way to get that into your life.
Yes, I know an photographer who's an attorney and he does both. Like the photography part, I think, is more of his like passion and a hobby. And,
Hmm.
you know, being an attorney brings home the money and everything. But I just love seeing him in those two worlds. It's very interesting and he didn't limit. I like how he didn't limit himself and it's like I'm going to try this. I'm going to do it and he's an amazing photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I'm sure those that only know him as the attorney would have no idea. Like, wait, you did this? You
Yeah.
took these pictures? Who are you? I don't even know you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that advice,
My
those words of
pleasure.
wisdom. Where can people find you and book a session with you or a numerology session or course?
Yeah, the easiest way is just go to the website lareikiguy.com, and then you can book sessions on there. You can sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every month
I
just
love
with
your
some
newsletters,
updates.
by the way.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I keep everybody posted when classes are coming up. I have a calendar on the website as well, and then I post some events on meetup.com as well under Reiki circles and more.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, do Reiki, numerology, hypnosis, meditation, all that stuff.
I will put those in the show notes as well so
Awesome.
people can have access easily.
Yeah.
And thank you again for being here. This was so fascinating. Now I am inspired even more to look at my notes again and for the
Yeah, go back. If
numerology.
you have any questions, you always shoot them my way.